Talking about Cassandra Ventura, question from Tracy Q. Do you think focusing on Cassie as the main witness weakens the prosecution's case? Why not widen the case?
When I'm assuming that the question is widen the case regarding other victims, right? Because
Well, I
there
mean,
are other victims.
there are other alleged victims, but
Yeah.
she is alleged victim number one. She makes up the racketeering charge. She makes up her individual sex trafficking charge. Her testimony helps support all the charges that are being leveled against Sean Combs.
No, and listen, at the end of the day, all trials are you are convincing a jury or you're explaining a jury, and a jury's going to pick, one of two stories. So to use her to get the story of what P Diddy did, the illegal things that he did, and to have her as the protagonist, the victim in your story, it helps them, and I think it's just as wide as they've wanted it because they're going to include other victims, other crimes, other things that he did, but she's the main protagonist, and I think it's good to have that. Anytime that you're trying to get a jury to understand a story, it's good to, present it in that manner.
Mauricio, we have a good question, backup question here from Enlin93. Is there any chance the feds have backup charges if they don't get him this time? Could there be something they're saving to make sure they get him, or is this all or nothing? That's a great question.
I mean, in my opinion and in my experience, I think that they're going to try and hit him with everything that they possibly have. All right now. Now, you see all the time superseding indictments. And let's say, if they were to lose, I don't think they're going to stop. They're going to look for other stuff that could possibly be there to charge them again. I don't think that they're ever going to rest if they have a public loss like that. But usually they have to charge everything that they've witnessed in their investigation. Now is the time to bring it up.
Afi, we got a court update I wanted to bring everybody aware to, and I want to throw it to you. So the judge says, I anticipate Mr. David James will be the next witness. How is he relevant? To which the prosecutor responds, as to the means and methods of the enterprise, meaning for the racketeering charge, Mr. Combs threatening to assault employees. So I think that this was a former chief assistant or assistant of some kind, right? I mean, if we're talking about racketeering and we're talking about the people who are part of this criminal enterprise or organization, important witness, right?
Right. So I expect to see a lot more former employees take the stand, but we want to know how he ran his operation, how involved he was with this operation, and how involved and knowledgeable all of these players were. So you've got his personal assistant, you've got his bodyguards, you've got his chef, you've got anyone who was there who assisted him. You might have a massage therapist, but anyone who was there and assisted him with these alleged charges in the racketeering matter. So I expect us to see a lot of that. So, and we also want to see um, his observations. What did you see? Did you make this appointment? Where? How long was it supposed to last? Were you ever present for the freak offs? What was Cassie like? Was she always high? Was she sober? Did she seem enthusiastic about it? Did you see her be abused verbally or physically before, during, or after? I expect to see a lot of that from his former employees.
And when they talk about means and methods of the enterprise, it's just the ways in which Sean Combs allegedly conducted this criminal organization, right?
Yeah.
Using threats or violence or intimidation to allegedly engage in a campaign of abuse, against women and others. So it's a really important aspect of the overall racketeering charge. And when you're talking about, racketeering conspiracy, there has to be that agreement between Combs and another person or others, even though he is the only one charged. We can talk about that if we want. This is interesting. Okay, so Mauricio, I'm going to throw to you interesting evidentiary question. So this is a question from Kate's Game 1. If the missing witness can't be found, so we're talking about alleged victim number 3, can the prosecution use their police interviews, videos as evidence in her absence?
Well, I'm gonna say it's hearsay unless they can bring the video in another manner. I've seen them try to, bring in like chats or bring in videos using the person that extracted it. But then there's also evidentiary challenges with that. I mean, the short answer is they could try. the rules of evidence exist, but it doesn't mean that the prosecution can't try to ram something down your throat despite the rules of evidence.
Mhm.
And that's the constant battle of a trial. A trial is like ready, set, and then start protecting yourself from all the wrong things that they want to try and get the judge to agree to. In my experience, that's what every big case is. So it sounds like if it would be hearsay, can they try to authenticate it through another matter? They can, and that would be a challenge at that time regarding authentication.
Because the defense has a right to cross-examine her. The defense has a right to question her
Mhm.
credibility. And if it's a
Yes,
pre-taped recording, what are they supposed to do? I mean, it's a problem.
right.
So we got a question here from D Princess. I'll throw this one to you, Afi. Do you think Diddy's assistants or security guards will be charged as a co-conspirator? If so, when?
I don't think that they will be charged as a co-conspirator. I think that they'll bring them out during this trial, and that is what the prosecution expects to use to bury him. But I don't foresee them being charged. I've always thought that, just since January of last year, I've always said I don't believe that he's going to have any other co-conspirators. I think that if he, they were going to be charged, they would be charged by now.
But don't you think, Afi, that that's going to be a prime question for cross-examination? Did you take a deal? Were you offered anything by the prosecution? You're accused of, you're basically saying you were part of this alleged criminal activity. Why aren't you charged? I think that's a fair point of cross-examination, Afi.
It's super fair, and I think that the prosecution is going to have to bring that out on their direct. They have a mandate. They want to convict Sean Diddy Combs, and they're going to do whatever they need to do within the bounds of ethics to get that done. It's super normal. It happens all the time. That doesn't mean that I don't think the witness loses any credibility. I don't think the prosecution loses any credibility. It's pretty normal in the practice of law.
So by
I'll
the way,
stop there.
we're taking your questions right now as they come in. I will read them and answer them on air, but we're also waiting for more updates in court. No cameras, no audio equipment, but we're doing our best to recount to you as soon as possible in real time what is happening in that courtroom. So we got a question from Rel. I'll throw this to you, Mauricio. If Diddy beat the RICO, racketeering, and sex trafficking charges, will Diddy get time served? The one thing I'll add to this is he's also facing the prostitution charges, transportation to engage in prostitution. And for me, Mauricio, I feel that that is a relatively easier conviction to get him on, right? So if you're talking about transporting alleged sex workers and victims for purposes of prostitution, I don't know. That feels like pretty easy to convict him on, no?
Yeah, okay. Do you have the prostitute? Is he going to testify? Do you have the manifest that shows that he was on his private plane? I mean, that's all you got to show. That the testimonial evidence plus whatever airline tickets that he bought and things of that nature. It's pretty easy to prove. Now, I don't know. I don't even know. Has there been a video of an actual freak off in evidence yet?
There's been descriptions. I don't think an actual full video has been played. I'll get confirmation from producers, but look, I'll say this much. Mauricio. If you talk about that charge, right, and the defense said in their opening statement he was paying these people for their time and experience. Really, I don't feel like
That's bad.
That's not a good one.
No, that's a bad one. That's a bad one, and it's not gonna fly. And you're already dealing with a jury that they don't have to decide whether or not P. Diddy's a bad guy. They know he's a bad guy because they saw a video of him beating up a woman, and really nobody likes a wife beater, period. So they're gonna be in a position to say whether or not are we gonna acquit this guy that we don't like. And if a jury doesn't like you, that's not a good sign. Like they could convict you just because they hate your guts, just because they saw that video of you beating her up. And now everything else that she says has credibility because we already saw you beat her down for no reason.
Well,
So it's a tough
I
one.
hear, exactly what you're saying, and I think that does become a little bit of a difficulty there. But this jury, I mean, I would love to know what they're thinking right now about this entire case. I don't know. I have no idea. It's so hard. We get our reporting from Elizabeth Milner about them taking notes, checking out, looking in, paying attention. It's impossible to know what a jury might be thinking. Okay. Okay, here's an update regarding one of the questions you had, Marisa. So the jury actually heard audio about an intense freak-off where, I have to be careful how I say this, There's some profanity used. There's one part, I want to effing see that. It's my life. I will kill you. If you had to pull it up, or I will kill you. And you. Oh, so that was a part. Right. So there was that whole back and forth about Cassandra Ventura allegedly threatening somebody who had apparently a freak-off tape and was going to release it. Do you know about that, Afi, right? That came out last week, where she was basically coming out and, there was audio of her here saying, if you release that, I'll come after you. Diddy will come after you. That's what I think the allegation was. I don't know what the value of that was. What do you think the value of that whole exchange was?
So I don't know if they were trying to show that Cassie is violent and that she maybe had some agency, but to me, it shows me how afraid she was about any video of her in these compromising situations getting out. And that just goes to my argument about consent, and consent not being consent when you're being coerced. And the fact that she knew that Diddy had these videos of her and that he could ruin her professional life, which he was in control of at any time. It shows you how afraid she was, how panicked she was, and how her consent was likely forced. So that's the value for me.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We got more updates coming in. The jury has officially entered the courtroom once again. The prosecutor says no further questions for Miss Morgan. So Kerry Morgan, this is Cassandra Ventura's best friend who testified earlier. She had witnessed assaults, talked about the changes in her friend. So now we move on to cross-examination by Mark Agnifilo, one of Sean Combs' defense attorneys. Asks, you were Miss Ventura's best friend since 2004. Kerry Morgan responds, actually 2001. We met waiting for the Polaroids to develop. I was living in Buffalo. She was in Connecticut. Let me bring in right now, we got another guest. We got with us former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Nima, so good to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time. Look at this panel right here. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Nima, okay. Talk to us about what you're taking away from today's testimony. Kerry Morgan, Dawn Richard. What do you think the big takeaways are, both for the prosecution and the defense? Who do you think it's helping more?
Certainly helping the prosecution, Jesse. We'll start with Dawn Richard. Look, she got cross-examined by Westmoreland a bit, some inconsistent statements. But whenever you have someone who's corroborating Cassie Ventura's testimony, an independent witness, even though she's filed that civil lawsuit and may have a financial motive, that's helpful for the government. And then moving towards her former best friend, of course, this is someone that we got some very good statements related to control and fear in. Why Cassie Ventura wouldn't leave Combs, because he controlled every aspect of her life. And she too was a victim. Combs went after her with a coat hanger. So now we have a skillet, we have a coat hanger. I mean, you're seeing this pattern of violent activity. So all in all, a very good day for the prosecution, in my opinion.
Nima, because you just joined us, we're going to throw a question at you. We got questions coming in from our viewers. This is from Melissa Butas. Why isn't the jury sequestered, Nima?
Great question. Look, people don't want to serve as jurors. And now you have a 2-month trial, and it's really a big imposition on their personal lives. You're taking away their cell phones. You're removing them from their friends and family. So I understand why people do like the jurors sequestered, especially in this day and age. You don't want one of the jurors here on Law&Crime or Googling about the case. That's how you end up in a mistrial. But generally speaking, at least if you're thinking about the jurors, they do not want to be sequestered.
By the way, I want to thank everybody for coming in here to not only be a part of this, but also all of our viewers for your outstanding questions. So engaged, great questions we're getting. And one of the reasons we can keep putting on these live lunch shows and updating you as soon as possible about what's happening in that courtroom is because we have an amazing partner and sponsor. I just want to call out real quick. It's Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. This firm, let me just say, amazing track record. So this is a firm, just to throw out some stats to you, they secured a $6 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, $13 million for a wrongful auto death in Georgia, and another $6 million for a trucking accident in New York. And mind you, this was all after insurance offered their clients significantly less in each of these cases. And if you're listening to this and saying, look, my case might not be worth millions of dollars, that's not the point. You can still start a claim and fight for what you deserve. So Morgan & Morgan, they actually make it so simple. It can all be done right from your phone. 8 clicks or less. You can upload documents, sign contracts, talk to your legal team. It's all done through your phone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Live. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on screen. Okay, we have an interesting part that we've been bringing up, these polls. And there was a poll that we had about, do you believe the absence of victim 3 will affect the outcome of the case? Because we talked about how there's a problem actually getting this witness to testify. 57% of you say no, 42% of you say yes. So it seems, Nima, just to throw more questions, because we're going to be, we have limited time with you, it seems to me that the audience at least believes this witness is not the make or break of the case.
It doesn't make or break it, but it's certainly helpful. And this was my concern from the jump. You have someone in Sean Diddy Combs who has almost unlimited money. There's a very real possibility that he pays one of these victims to go away, or he intimidates them. We know as prosecutors, sometimes in these domestic violence or sexual assault cases, and I know this is sex trafficking in RICO, that the victims, the witnesses, they can get cold feet. So the question is, did the government really, slice this too thinly? Obviously, we know there are upwards of almost 100 people who claim there are victims. Should they have 5, 6, 7, 8 victims to really overwhelm the defense in case one or more of them went sideways like this?
Got a question for you, Mauricio, from Danny. Why was Dawn's scope of testimony so limited? Did they bring up when she said Diddy locked her in the car?
If it was limited, it was probably by design, and they probably just wanted to keep her focused on what she knew and had firsthand knowledge, because they didn't want her to get cross-examined on certain aspects that she may have been cloudy on, or et cetera. So, when you ask why was her testimony so limited, it's by design. It's because the prosecution wanted it to be limited. That would be the only answer that I.
Because it's really to support the testimony of Cassandra Ventura, right? It's to say, what did you observe regarding Cassandra Ventura? And she's not, I believe, one of the alleged, identified victims in this indictment, although her testimony about being scared and feeling threatened actually goes to the overall indictment against Sean Combs, why, the means and methods of this criminal enterprise to keep people quiet or keep people compliant, or also to, explain why Cassandra Ventura didn't speak up earlier. Right, Mauricio?
Yeah, and listen, and also, she does have a pending lawsuit, and she's also, I'm sure, on cross-examination, they could have brought up, okay, well, you saw all of this in 2009, you didn't say anything until 2025. I know part of what they're saying is that they were scared of P Diddy, and that he was the type of person that would threaten them. But at the end of the day, she saw these acts of violence, and she never spoke out. She never called the police. So I guess that the prosecution wanted to just narrowly tailor her testimony to back up Cassie. That would be, make sense.
Afi, question for you from D Princess. I asked because people keep saying she, Cassie, agreed to it. Does her originally agreeing harm the sex trafficking charge? I think that means because she admitted she first had agreed to the freak-offs as a way to make her partner, Sean Combs, happy. What do you think?
No, I think that she has a right to initially engage in anything. I think, she can say that she wants to do something 99 times. I don't care how, call it what you want, sexually deviant, a little bit of freaky, a little bit, risque or interesting. She can agree to that 99 times, but the 100th time when she says she doesn't want to do it, that's when it becomes a problem. It does not matter that she consented early on. Her desires, she shouldn't be shamed for her desires. My point has always been, at what point did it become coercive? At what point was she under a threat of violence? And that's the huge factor in this matter for me.
Nima, we've got a super chat question from Nest Dog. Nest Dog, thank you so much for your super chat question. Why isn't Aubrey O'Day testifying? I mean, if the witness list hasn't been released, how do we know for sure she's not? That's my answer, Nima. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Obviously, we're just finished week 1 of a 2-month trial. We're going to have a lot of witnesses that are going to be called in the prosecution's case in chief. We may have rebuttal witnesses. Look, and you bring up like Kate Moss and the Johnny Depp case. Sometimes people weren't initially going to be called, and the defense does something that really opens the door, makes that witness relevant. So I think it's very premature right now to say a witness will or will not be called.
Got another update from court. So this is the continued question and cross-examination by Sean Combs' defense counsel, Mark Agnifilo, of Kerry Morgan. He asks, then you were both in New York City? Kerry Morgan responds, I stayed downtown. She moved to Harlem. Agnifilo asks, have you ever met Kim Porter, who we know was Sean Combs' ex? Yes, probably at a concert. The question then is, was Cassie ever jealous? Morgan responds, yes. Nima, let me throw that to you. The whole Cassandra Ventura was jealous that she wasn't the love of Sean Combs' life, that it was really Kim Porter, focusing on the jealousy. Is the relevance of that to say, hey, this is the reason the relationship deteriorated, this is the reason that there was problems in the relationship, this is the reason why Cassandra Ventura is now coming out against Sean Combs? I'm not sure I quite follow what the whole jealousy angle is.
I think there's two parts to it. One is sort of the revenge, right? This is a disgruntled ex that has an axe to grind because she wasn't the main girlfriend, right? She was on the side. So that's that. But they're also going down this line of, essentially mutual combat, right? That Cassie Ventura was also physically violent. She punched Combs, so certainly doesn't excuse it. But what the defense is trying to do is say this was a violent relationship. It was a toxic relationship. Cassie, too, participated in these jealous rages and the violence. Again, they're trying to walk the line between physical violence and sex trafficking. I don't think they're going to be able to do so, but I think that's the argument there, Jesse.
All right, we got another question from, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, Evangenia Kartsasheva. Okay, apologies if I mispronounced your name. How soon do you think professionals like forensic psychologists will take the stand to help explain manipulation mechanics and why it takes so long for any victim besides Cassandra to speak up? Mauricio, I'll throw this to you.
Probably a little later. Usually the prosecution likes to, start with, really good witnesses and end with a really good witnesses. And usually, expert witnesses like forensics, like the one that this person is describing, sometimes tend to be considered a little boring. So usually, I would expect them to be somewhere in the middle. I've never seen a case where they start or end. I've seen some murder cases where they end with the forensic pathologist just because they want the jury to end with the gruesome pictures of the murder scene. But other than that, they usually sandwich them somewhere in the middle, in my experience.
Well, listen, you guys gave great responses to a lot of the questions that I had, a lot of questions that the viewers had. And this, I thought, I always love doing these lunchtime shows because we're breaking down what's happening in that court in real time. There are so many questions and issues and legal arguments in this case that I could talk about this probably for another 2 hours. Fortunately, we don't have that time. But Mauricio Padilla, Afi Patterson, Nima Rahmani, thank you both. Thank you, all three of you, for coming on and breaking it down with me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse. Talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And everyone out there, thank you so much for your questions. Before we wrap things up, again, have to thank our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. Their support helps us to keep on doing this. This is not only just an incredible firm, over 1,000 attorneys, but I have to highlight their track record again. I'm talking about a firm that secured a $6 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, $13 million for a wrongful auto death in Georgia, another $6 million for a trucking accident in New York. And mind you, all of these were considerably higher than what was being offered in each of these cases by the insurance company. So even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan makes it so simple. You can do everything right from your phone. It just takes 8 clicks or less. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LCLive by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. Everyone, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Jesse Weber. We'll see you next time.